So one teaching I received a long time ago is that in a time of crisis, you don't have to learn something new. There are millions of practices, and some are directed specifically towards one thing and another. And we may think we have to know something, but all we need is the practice that we're most at home with. And if we work with the practice that we're most at home with, we generate the most wisdom, the most understanding, the most sincerity, the most relaxed fearlessness, and then we dedicate that. So whether it's a crisis in your family or a crisis in the world, you have what you need right at hand and practice that. So one of the lineage practices that we're very close to in this community is Lord Jigten Sumgon's Bodhicitta practice. And I'll give the instructions for this practice, but let's work with the instructions in tandem with how we've been practicing all day. So there's a sense of coming into balance and then using that moment of balance to shed self-referencing, even if it's only fiber by fiber, and to notice the pull of distraction in our meditation and soften right in that moment, returning to balance, and that our body-mind continuum is always giving us signals as to when we're being thrown off balance and how quickly we can come back to that balance. And we can see in our own practice, whatever our regular practices may be, that any kind of distraction moves us out of our practice. So we want to be able to see what are the distractions, when and how does our mind move from the practice, from sitting in the natural state of mind within the practice. How and when do we move away, and how early can we perceive those signals? And can we start to keep closer through mindfulness of body to less discursiveness and less attachment to that continuous narration of our experience or mediation of our experience of the I am doing this. So when it comes to the Bodhicitta practice, in the Bodhicitta practice, at first we're learning how to generate bodhicitta, and we're learning to see what that feeling is, and that feeling is both mental and physical. So we feel the sensation. It might be centered in our heart, or it might be radiating through our body. However you feel it is unique and just right to you. And we may use a memory to evoke that feeling, but we're not caught in the narrative of how we give rise to that feeling. We want to sit into the beingness, which is a physical sensation mixed with an open tenderness, a tender-hearted, vulnerable, radiating quality of warmth. So we're going for that particular feeling. And for those who are new to this practice, then this evening, just learning to see that sensation of what the warmth of bodhicitta feels like is the practice for you. As we become more experienced, it's very similar to what we've been doing all day. As we become more experienced, we start to see what that tender, open, fearless vulnerability, that receptivity is like, and we see all the times that we're pulled out of that for whatever reason. As we start extending that warmth through our families, through our communities, and extending it throughout the world. And in this meditation, there are no limits and no boundaries. And as we're doing this, at first it seems like there is an I that is feeling something and extending something. And as we get more and more comfortable with the state of bodhicitta, we can start to relax that quality that thinks there's an I and thinks there is a someone to whom we're offering bodhicitta, and see that there's no separation. There is no self or other to be found. There is that non-referential state of just exquisitely tender openness, fearless and warm, that simply abides and extends without a reference of I, without a reference of doing something, and without a reference of other. So practicing as we have been today, we can give rise to that warmth, rest in that warmth, notice distraction when it arises, come back to the balance within that warmth of loving kindness, begin to extend it, and notice when the I starts to arise, and it can arise in terms of I am doing something or I am afraid to do this. Either way, soften right in that moment, go back to the warmth, and gradually, softly, see if in the softening, in the relaxed alertness, can there be a wearing away of the centering of self to the spaciousness of the compassion and the warmth itself. So the traditional instructions are to imagine a cute little chubby-cheeked baby, a little cherubic baby coming to you laughing, and you see how your heart melts and there's an open receptivity in that moment. Similarly, it can be your dog. We've seen dogs on the screen and cats on the screen. So that sense of remembering a state where you have a felt experience of that warmth, that becomes the object of focus for the meditation. Breathing in, I am breathing in loving kindness. Breathing out, I am breathing out loving kindness. It may be more like breathing in, I am dwelling in loving kindness. Breathing in, I am aware of the feeling of loving kindness. Breathing out, I am aware of the feeling of loving kindness. And that may be the beginning. And as you make that your home, and the suggestion is that we work in this way really for several weeks so that we can see the moment of distraction, we can see the moment of hesitation or the moment of fear, and as we have been working, we can see the pull of it in terms of the shifting from our balance. The balance of our energies, the balance of our flowing of consciousness. It may be a tightening or a tensing somewhere in the body that becomes a little bit of fear or a little bit of I don't want or doubt, any of those things. So let's begin with generating the feeling of loving kindness. And I see Anupama was just able to join now, so I'm going to just briefly orient you. We are going into a loving kindness and bodhicitta meditation. It's taught from the founder of our lineage. So actually we have our right hand on our right knee and our left hand in our lap, and it's said that you should smile when you're doing this. So we can actually see in the subtle energies that physically smiling has a relaxing quality in the flow of our consciousness. So experiencing this, we recall a moment of loving kindness arising in our lives, and it can be someone loving you or you loving someone, or it can even be the feeling of the sun, the warmth of the sun on a beautiful sunny day, not like the blizzard we're having in Maine. And we maintain that feeling, noticing every time there's the slightest hesitancy or distraction. And let's keep that for a good period, noticing distraction as it arises, softening with the distraction, coming back to the feeling, and strengthening the feeling. So we want to keep our meditation fresh, our alertness fresh. You can start to see your distraction increasing. So there's no contest of how long can you maintain it. It's good to stop while you're fresh so that you come back with a habit of continuous freshness in your meditation. So as you were meditating, just noticing, reflecting the capacity to connect with the feeling state is the first quality. To start to identify what is the loving kindness quality of bodhicitta, that feeling of warmth and wanting the best for someone. So eventually we work with loving kindness, we work with compassion, rejoicing, and equanimity. But tonight we're working with loving kindness specifically. And you can see as we connect with that feeling, it at first may be hard to find an authentic feeling. So you may go back over and over till you see a spark of warmth. Perfectly fine. You're getting to know your mind. This is what meditation is. And then as we get more and more at home in this meditation, we start to see what are all the levels of distraction. And this quality of being, I love the image of the charioteer. In the Zen meditation, sometimes it's riding the ox, and a lot of the, like in Shantideva, it talks about riding the horse or putting a stake in and tying an elephant to the stake. So continuously we're looking at, there is a feeling, there is distraction. And if we can start to see that we can approach this with a lightness without a judgment of castigating ourselves because we're continuously distracted, more with a kind of curiosity. Oh, I see there is a pattern to my distraction. It's one of the different escape factors that we talked about this afternoon. It could be the security of narrating the meditation. It could be just the lack of discipline that you can't hold the concentration. So you're just noticing your unique mind without any quality of rigidity, expectation, or shaming your mind. It's wonderful to think of, particularly in the loving kindness meditation, that we soften when we see the distraction so that we get more and more gentle with ourselves as we meditate. Now, particularly because we are working with the state of emergency in the Ukraine, I think it's good if we're able, if we have a sense of being able to locate the loving kindness, to go back to that first prayer that we say in the beginning, may all sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me. So who are we at war with in the moment? I'm not suggesting that we take the greatest wound in our life or something that might approach trauma, but maybe a difficult person. And consider that difficult person to be across the room for us. It could be a mildly irritating person. So the hardening to another is the seed of war. And can we loosen that and soften that in our meditation tonight, dedicating that to the crisis in the Ukraine or to any crisis that we see around the world. So when we're starting to do something like this, it's really interesting first to acknowledge what is it that we think is other? Why is it that we think that there is a separation between ourself and the foe, the so-called person we're at war with? there isn't anybody across the room from us. We bring the image or the memory, something about that person to mind, and we can feel our irritation arising. We can feel our shutting down quality because they irritate us, our dislike arising, but we're just disliking a part of our own mind. So if we think about it, the Christian do unto others as you would have them do unto you is more from our perspective, do unto others what you do unto others, you are doing to you. So there is no foe. There is how we're interpreting experiences and how we're holding those experiences, and in this moment, how we're holding a memory, how we're holding a part of our own mind that we don't want to touch, don't want to approach, and that we've developed a habit of anger or resistance to. So in this meditation, we're going in and giving rise to that warmth again, because, to us it seems very real. We think there is a person outside, and we may be able to tell ourselves that it's a part of our own mind, but the memory is so strong, and the habit of anger and separation as a reaction to that memory is so strong that it still arises over and over again. So we give rise to that warmth, we sit with that warmth, we extend that warmth, and the second there's a hesitation, the second there is a fluctuation in the warmth, we go back and sit with the warmth again till we build it to the greatest strength that we can, and we start over. And we go with over and over and over. And it may be years that we work on one part of our own mind that has become such a strong habit of anger and pain, and that's perfectly all right. We're just removing one thread that is twisted into a giant rope in our own way, in our own time, but with absolute authenticity. So that there is in this moment one even brief second that we can extend the warmth authentically and sincerely. And at the same time, we have such compassion for ourselves, for the pain we are causing ourselves to hold on to a memory of anger, a memory of hurt. And compassion for ourselves for the difficulty of looking at the so-called foe and seeing that it was us all along. Perfectly all right. It is a limitless meditation, and every single time we work with it in this way, the hold of that habit of thinking, the hold of the pain of that injury is less and less and less. So knowing that we are in a safe space and we're working from a safe space, going into giving rise to, as best we can, a sincere warmth of loving kindness, wanting the best, with love, with openness, with no hesitation, with no fear, just dwelling in that space, that feeling, sensation, and when we're ready, approaching that difficult person, seeing the response of distraction, seeing the habit that we have created of hardening, going back to the loving kindness and starting again. So especially with this meditation, not judging, only softening when we see our resistance, when we see our struggle. Softening and not giving up. So one of the special qualities of the Bodhisattva mind, the Bodhisattva vow, is to never totally exclude someone from your heart. You may not be able or have the skills to work with that person or the memory of that person, but you haven't excluded them totally. So as I think about the Ukraine, I remember again what an extraordinary bodhisattva the great Thich Nhat Hanh was, and his associate, Sister Chung Kung. And what strikes me is even as a young person, he was committed to not taking sides in the war. So here we are seeing, all the countries yelling at each other, seeing everybody puffed up and fighting and defending and fighting and defending. And in that situation, Thich Nhat Hanh trained a small group of young people to be so steadfast in compassion that mentally they did not take sides. Here they were in their homeland, in their village, people they loved being hurt. And they would go out every day and move the bodies and bring rice and try and protect people. It's no way a wishy-washy kind of love. They were very active, putting themselves in danger over and over again, but they excluded no one and didn't waste their time with anger and sides and the escalating narrative. They held mountain-like bodhicitta and trained themselves to hold mountain-like bodhicitta. And I want to bring up one of his really most famous poems. One of the things I remember from Sister Chung Kung's biography is, you may remember there was a certain point where there was an exodus from Vietnam and people were leaving on boats that were unstable, just like they are today. And they were met in the water by pirates who would rape the women and kill people and throw them overboard. And the reality of that was insurmountable in facing it, but he didn't turn away from that suffering, and he didn't in any way, like a mountain, move from loving kindness. And she relates a time when they decided they couldn't get any help, and no country would help them, and their people were dying, so they decided they would rent a boat. And the boat was being held by this one official at the harbor, and he wouldn't give them the permit. And Sister Chung Kung was saying she was so angry and so frustrated, and she just wanted to go in and yell at the official. And he said, no, you have to go into retreat and do walking meditation and essentially come back to not only your balance, but the balance of bodhicitta. So it was more than just balance. It was an extraordinary holding of this official with an authentic and sincere loving kindness. And only till she could get to that point was it all right for her to go in and talk to the official. And she talked to the official and he released the boat. So we think that, how does this practice affect the reality that we're living in? And it affects the reality that we're living with him. The force of the loving kindness melted the heart of the official. So they got the boat, and there they were going out to the sea, rescuing people. And this is where he wrote this poem. All the children who had been raped, all the people who had been killed by the pirates, the people who were drowning due to the war. And this is what he wrote. Please call me by my true names. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving. To be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I'm just going to repeat that. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks, and I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I am a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands, and I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears so vast it fills the 4 oceans. Please call me by my true names so I can hear all my cries and all my laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true names so I can wake up and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. And he writes about composing this poem. After the Vietnam War, when many people wrote to us in Plum Village, we received hundreds of letters each week from the refugee camps in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and the Philippines, hundreds each week. It was very painful to read them, but we had to be in contact. We tried our best to help, but the suffering was enormous, and sometimes we were discouraged. It is said that half the boat people fleeing Vietnam died in the ocean. Only half arrived at the shores of Southeast Asia. There are many young girls, boat people, who were raped by the sea pirates, even though the United Nations and many countries tried to help the government of Thailand prevent that kind of piracy. Sea pirates continued to inflict much suffering on the refugees. One day we received a letter telling us about a young girl on a small boat who was raped by a Thai pirate. She was only 12 and she jumped in the ocean and drowned herself. When you first learn of something like that, you get angry at the pirate. You naturally take the side of the girl. As you look more deeply, you will see it differently. If you take the side of the little girl, then it's easy. You only have to take a gun and shoot the pirate. But we can't do that. In my meditation, I saw that if I had been born in the village of the pirate and raised in the same condition as he was, I would now be the pirate. There's a great likelihood that I would become a pirate. I can't condemn myself so easily. In my meditation, I saw that many babies are born along the Gulf of Siam, hundreds every day. And if we educators, social workers, politicians, and others do not do something about the situation, in 25 years, a number of them will become sea pirates. That is certain. If you or I were born today in those fishing villages, we might become sea pirates in 25 years. If you take a gun and shoot the pirate, you shoot all of us, because all of us are to some extent responsible for the state of affairs. After a long meditation, I wrote this poem. In it, there are 3 people, the 12-year-old girl, the pirate, and me. Can we look at each other, recognize ourselves in each other? The title of the poem is Please Call Me by My True Names, because I have so many names. When I hear one of these names, I have to say yes. So let's take a moment with that perspective, just enveloping the whole earth with loving kindness, all of life. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. We're not separate from all that is alive in this very moment. And generating that warmth and loving kindness as a part of all that is alive, not separate from all that is alive. And now dedication prayers. By this virtue, may I achieve omniscience, and may all who travel on the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara by defeating all enemies, confusion, the cause of suffering. Sonam di tamche zikpani, tobne ne pedra nam pamche te, ke gana chi balong truk pai, si pe sole drowa drowar shog. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Jangchub sem chog rinpoche, ma ge panam ke gyurchig, ke panyam pa me payang, gong ne gong du pelwar shog. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. Lama kukam sangwar solwadeb, chogtu kutse ringwar solwadeb, trinli darshinge par solwadeb, Lama dangdrelwa me parjin lob. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. Jampel pawo jitar ken padang, kuntu sangpo de yang de shinte, de dag kungi je sub dag lob ching, gewa di dag tam che rab tu no. May the life of the Lama, the glory of the teachings be firm. May the world be filled with holders of the teaching. May the abundant strength of the teachings' patrons increase, and may all be auspicious, so that the teachings remain for ages to come. Tenpe Palgyur Lama, Lame Shape Ten, Tenzin Kebu Sa Teng Yang La Kyab, Tenpe Jindagna Tong Dorwage, Tenpa Yun Ring Ne Pe Trashi Shog. So continuing to maintain mindfulness, feel the softness after so much Bodhicitta meditation, the softness of your heart, and carry that into your sleep. And as you fall asleep, notice the shiftings of your energies and notice the moment of wisdom that opens just before you enter the dream state. So we're bringing this mindfulness, this focus on the body-mind continuum, even to the stages of going into sleep, noticing the transition into the dream time. So we meet again tomorrow at 6:30. I look forward to seeing everyone. Really wonderful to practice together this evening. And take care.